Hello, my name is Victor Santiago. Uh, I'm behind Library Science and Culture, and I have a new site, ChatGPT Librarian. And I'd figure I'd go over ChatGPT Librarian, seeing how there seems to be a lot of different takes on it, and I'd like to put in my 2 cents. So, briefly, my name is Victor Santiago. You can find out more about me on LinkedIn. In terms of school, I went to Stony Brook University. I double majored in philosophy and psychology. In terms of psychology, it's a school that likes cognitive psychology, as opposed to clinical psychology. And though they have a great school of social work, and you shouldn't, if you want to go for clinical and that's the school you want, that's fine. It just has a lot of research in cognitive science. In terms of philosophy, I was mostly interested in existentialism, uh, uh, specifically in films and books and stories and stuff. And the other side was philosophy of science, and I had the good fortune to have Professor Silverman for hermeneutics and deconstruction. It sounds a little bit weird, but I think the main thing is that you can go from one philosophy or theory to another. Excuse me. While holding on to your goal. I went to St. John's in Queens, New York, for my MLS. Great school. It is a Jesuit school. Uh, I grew up Roman Catholic, so I was used to the crucifixes everywhere. I don't know if you've had that sort of background. You might find that a little weird, but whatever. It was a great school, great times, great people, great teachers. Um, yeah. It is worth the premium, I'll say. As far as my doctorate goes, I'm an ABD. I have to finish um, the dissertation. I'm just about to hand in what I hope to be the final proposal, and we'll see where it goes. Excuse me. The dissertation is on the I would say effect of mobile technologies in rural areas. There's a great study in Nigeria that explains how sending little text messages to remind women to take their prenatal vitamins lowered child mortality, and that's the kind of thing I'm interested in. Um, my I would say what I took from the classes was a great appreciation for systems. I had a great professor, Miss White, really great class on systems. Um, I would say the other thing I took away from it was this idea of AI as, and I would say this for machine learning too. It's not that it isn't cool and changes things. It does. That's what the whole point of the site and what I'm babbling about is about. Um, but it is applied statistics. It is guessing. Chances are you mean this in very cool ways, and that's not to diminish it or minimize it or anything like that. Um, but just to say that it's not this sort of foreign thing. It is an application of math, which is very cool. Um, the concept of information itself that changed a lot. Uh, just not going to go through the whole thing, but if you think of pressing your thumb into clay, Now that clay is in your formation, the formation of your thumb. And you can think of that in terms of how information affects people. What imprint does that information makes on a person? So, what else here? Let's get to the next slide. So, I think when I was thinking of who would criticize and why I would criticize me in terms of tech determinism, because I do think technology is definitely one of the more interesting determinants of what people are going to be doing. So I say that because of the economics of friction. My idea is this: people want you to spend money. People want you to spend money from home. You go to a website to spend money. How about a nice AI salesperson who can learn from your cookies and stuff like that and pick up from the way you're talking to it to smooth talk you into to buying something? I think since that is going to be so cheap to do, and there are going to be so many people doing this. And I say that because you can run things like Chat GPT from your computer. It's it's not widely practiced, but you can do these things. You can make your own, um, or you can use a service and have it tuned to your specific needs. What I'm saying is that buying things online will probably have some sort of AI chat feature involved. It might be invisible, certainly in your search bar, but I would not be surprised if there was some kind of interface to get you to buy things. I think the other thing is that people are going to use it for customer service, like if you go to your cable company or something like that. There's already a chatbot, and that's the other thing. Everywhere that has a chatbot, hopefully the chatbot will get cooler. Um, but places like governments will hopefully start using them. Large companies, and then smaller companies, and with that, governments will start using them as the cost comes down. In that case, you can also expect public libraries as an extension of services. Certainly, universities will probably want to have some kind of chatbot to get you to join the university, and then it just makes sense that the university would look to the library to see if they have one. Truth is, these bots are about conveying information in natural language from a range of people whose natural language differs. So one thing you could say is like maybe there's certain words in certain regions that are different than others. Something like pop and soda, it may not seem like a big deal, and you're kind of talking to a person. And hopefully, it's not a big deal for ChatGPT the way it was for if you were searching on the some kind of catalog. You know, if it's cool, you'll get it'll be cool, but not everything is as cool as a library catalog. Um, in those cases, out there in business world and stuff like that, ChatGPT will be able to figure things so well and so fluidly. You may ask why have a person to do this or something like that. There are many reasons why you should have a person to do this, and I'll get to that later. Um, the TLDR is humans are still the cheapest supercomputers around. Um, so the normalized expectations from people on the interwebs going from site to site chatting, um, it will be expected of the library to have one. It is kind of expected, I would think conceptually in general, that an organization premised on the idea of information dissemination would have something automated to do that. There's lots of friction involved with that happening. I offer that the friction for that happening will be reduced. I'm hoping I play a part in that. But we'll see. This is an adventure. All right, that's enough for this slide. The forced juxtaposition. All right. So I wrote librarians. I'm not going to say the word. So ChatGPT is comparable to how librarians are likened to Google. So one thing people say is, why do you need libraries? Everything is online. Oh, no, oh God, when they say that, they just no respect for paywalls. And when you're the app, I mean, you're the product, and everything is free, and you're finding out what you want, and you are getting information in exchange for trading your privacy. It's surveillance capitalism. I don't think it's. I think it's a kind of maybe a stage, but I hope it's not the future and the norm necessarily. I hope there's other avenues where it's mandatory that you have to exchange your privacy for a service, but there are some pay services that are pretty sweet. Anyway, so my point is that people say, why library? Everything's online. And you clearly understand, well, in case you're not a library person, lots of information is proprietary and held by people who own the copyright to it. So they literally own a copyright on information. And if you want to know that information, you have to pay. So that's one reason why everything is not freely available, like on Google or any of these chat people places. The other thing is Google and all these search engines. They don't search everything. There's so many sites that are out there that are awesome, and you're just not going to find them. You know, that's why it's helpful to curate and to share links. It's always cool to curate and to share links. Um, so the thing is, unlike Google, ChatGPT can answer questions that are pretty unstructured and without too much of the back and forth of a librarian. Does a fair job at guessing what they mean. That is, ChatGPT can look at a question and kind of discern intentionality. Um, Now, I still offer librarians are the cheapest super duper supercomputers, but ChatGPT is it's good, and it's not the only one out there. Bard is coming out, and all sorts of homebrew stuff, and all sorts of companies are getting into it. It is a pretty cool time. Um, Unfortunately, it's a messy time, and I've seen sites come and go already, and which is a bit of a bummer. And then sites they become so popular they can't run. Like even ChatGPT goes down every once in a while. Anyway, back to the point, which is like you can talk to GPT like you can talk to a librarian. I see that part being difficult to refute when it comes to basic things, which was also my argument of Google. I would say simply that any argument you can make against a search engine, you can make against this. ChatGPT, I think, ended in 21 as far as new information goes. So if you want like a summary of recent information, what you do is you go to the article, and if it's not too long, you copy, all right? And then you're going to go in chat GPT and say, hey, can you summarize this text for me? And then you can be cool. You can say, explain it to me like I'm five. I do that all the time. Oh, you're over here. There's a chat, a Reddit subreddit, explain it to me like I'm five. And yeah, I like that. You can also change the tone to more scientific, more professional, more fun, and have this summary in different tones. You can ask it, that is ChatGPT, to give you information about it that's not there. That's another thing. So you can ask for sentiment from text. Literally just copy the text and then write in ChatGPT, yeah, in ChatGPT, hey, could you please, do a sentiment analysis on this? And if you're fancy and you know bigger words like what kind of sentiment or what kind of thing you're looking for, there's lots of different things there. It will give you a fairly reasonable summary of sentiment. And that's pretty cool. That's some without having to know R, without having to know Python, without buying a separate application or site like that. It's pretty cool. So that goes above a librarian, right? So we went to the whole I can understand you, right? But the thing is, ChatGPT is limited to 21. Well, you say a library can get another implementation of ChatGPT for the library that's constantly up to date with what's in the library collection. Yes, that's fully possible. And in that case, would it be able to utilize its natural language processing to answer questions from patrons that are on par with a librarian? Possibly, yes. In terms of what is up to date, well, if the system's up to date and the librarian knows that, yeah, it is on par. So we're starting to get like, hey, there's a lot of things that librarians can do that Chat GPT can kind of do. Again, I offer to you that as well as it does with sort of basic, easy things, it's never going to be as good as a librarian. Well, I should say never. I say at this point it's not. Maybe someday. But job secure for now. Um, the other thing that I think is an advantage to Chat GPT over librarians is people feel okay uh, asking computers embarrassing questions, right? Um, More so than a person, even a librarian. Yeah. You're still dealing with revealing something about yourself. And even though this person is professionally there not to judge, you can't help but feel something like that. So if you're looking for something embarrassing, maybe going to a chatbot about the library is a good way to go. Um, so again, you have to push back against this idea that everything is on the internet. You can find everything with Google, and that ChatGPT can do everything a librarian can do. It can't, even if you give it everything it would need. There's just elements of human interaction that are such a large part of what's going on. And by that, I mean something like 90% or so of human communication is body language. And this stretching is, I'm tired. Um, but yeah, it's, just looking at the patron and all this, the words they use might have a completely different meaning just on the tone they ask the question. So that's why things like that. That's not the only reason. There are many. But when you are asked, hey, I can ask this and I can ask that of, this chatbot, and it could do a pretty decent job like asking you, you have to remind them why you're special and why you're there. In that case, the chat GPT may become the front line and take a bunch of questions for you to free you up for harder questions or doing other things. But it's, you're always going to have a role there. And this is the idea of the added value that librarians generate. So the way I think of this is, say a librarian can kind of be like an operator in some sense, right? Where you need information to contact an agency. Um, and the normal methods, search engines and the like, haven't been able to give you what you want. Librarians are so that they may intuit what you're really looking for. You may have the agency wrong or something like that. That's to say, it's not about giving you the quickest answer. You know, the value is the right answer. The value is we understand the question. If we don't, we go into it with you and we figure out what's going on. The last thing here is the development of prompt engineering, which is it'll be a whole separate thing and a good chunk of the website. But the idea is that when it comes to answering things like reference questions and using Chat GPT to solve office admin kind of things, I think a lot of questions will be answered in circulation. Uh, how? I just heard someone say how. It was in my head. So let's say you have a patron who is um, let's say, uh, what's a good one? Let's say we have a graduate student who is a proxy borrower for a faculty member that has a book out on interlibrary loan, and you want to know something like if they can renew. And it's one of those days you're blanking out. That is such a kind of semantically complicated question, has a lot of information in there. I don't know if you could just search that in I guess, Office or Google Drive and find the right thing. God, my chair. Find the right uh, document. But with ChatGPT that has digested the meanings of all these documents, it should be able to give you a reasonable answer. Um, and that's helpful. And I don't even mean like a student. I mean like, anyone, especially new people. Alrighty, what else? Um, the speed of immersion, disruptions. Okay, so here's the thing. Companies have slowly, I would say, companies that share content online for profit, specifically those that specialize in text. Um, and I would say, excuse me, that includes reporting. Like I said, ChatGPT, a couple years old. I mean, it doesn't know what's happened in the last couple of years. There are implementations that you can get that are current, uh, and those implementations can be programmed to write about stories that are developing. Um, in terms of these things being factual, it's again, you don't have the supercomputer of a human making these decisions. Hopefully, there is somewhere along the chain of publication, but if not, that's sad. So, does this mean that it's the end of journalism? No. Again, humans are the best supercomputer, and I have no doubt that once the content of these AIs in terms of news become normalized, we'll write something cooler. Yeah. But the point is that you can't ignore it. It's not business as usual. In a matter of time, people are going to look at ChatGPT. I have a $20 a month subscription. Um, I have done things with statistics I couldn't do. I've done things with code I otherwise couldn't do. Lots of cool things like that. And the question is, if I look at the roster of people I've hired, what can ChatGPT replace? Or yeah, yeah, can this technology replace someone on the payroll? My instinct is no, not really, unless like your part-time job is just figuring out these some math stuff or something like that. Um, Otherwise, you're fine. I would say what it does is reduce the time some things take on the job description. So I'm going to give you a little scenario, and then you can imagine what it means for a library office. There's a baseball team, the Ducks. Um, I wanted to put reminders on my dad's Google Calendar for every game they play that's a home game. Very long story short, there was no easy way of doing this. So I went to the schedule for the Ducks. I copied it all, and then I went to ChatGPT, and in natural language said something to the effect like, "Hi, I want to make reminders for my dad's Google Calendar. Here's the schedule for a baseball team." Excuse me. Um, but we want just the home team, the home games, and they all have links for selling tickets. So please give me a file that I can upload to Google Calendar that just has the home games. Put in colon and space and paste everything and hit enter or the little triangle. And it did it. So if you have, excuse me, a bunch of statistics that are wily, a bunch of unstructured data, that involves some people's jobs. You can have things like interesting information found about returns. You can ask questions of the data and stuff like that. So the disruption is going to be people who are good at using ChatGPT to do all these different things. And can you do so in a library? And let me get on a soapbox here for number two. You don't like paywalls for this because we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. If it was one of these things that weren't going to be a major impact, but things are going to kind of escalate quickly. I imagine that's my view. Um, Whereby people are going to start asking, "Hey, can you do this? Can you learn this?" And the question is going to be like, "Can I have money to go to this seminar and or this video online?" And then you go there, and it's all basic stuff, you know, stuff you could have gotten from a YouTube video because I there's a role for that. I argue that's too much friction between the librarians out there and what they need to know to move forward. So, in terms of prompt engineering, it is a way of prompting the ChatGPT or whatever. There's Bard coming out from Google. There's going to be all sorts of stuff, and you'll have to ask them perhaps different ways. But knowing how to get what you want from ChatGPT. Um, and there's a lyric from a song that goes, "I won't say anything unless you ask it right." And that is the deal with ChatGPT, and that's prompt engineering. If you want a statistic, you have to know precisely the statistic. If you want to know a file, you have to be able to describe what the file should have. If it's a table, what should be in the table. If you are looking for explanation on how to do something, I use that all the time. Like, how do I do something in this and that instead of going to Google or a search engine? I've asked it, and so long as it's something that I think, yeah, 2 years ago you should know how to do this, and it hasn't changed, it's pretty good. But we have to start experimenting with what works and doesn't work and share that information. That is that. Okay. About the site. Yeah, going back to the site. The main thing is to get, I think, what I think are useful articles for people to know. Um, we could talk about authorship. We could talk about the validity of what it says. Um, I usually read through it and kind of go, all right, all right, all right, and then I look it up. Usually Google Scholar, the usual suspects, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see how this was pulled from wherever, and at that point, I feel like I can trust it enough that people will get the right idea about this. Um, in terms of links, I really want to get librarians to these cool sites, but I tried making a page, but they come and go too quick. That doesn't work. And then I tried post, but I don't know if that gets it out fast enough. Um, so I'm going to experiment with different ways. I think it kind of comes down to finding out what type of librarians are interested in ChatGPT, and so far it's been all over the place. Um, yeah, yeah. You would think it's just like nerds or something. No. You think it's just admin people? No. Uh, um, Librarians, children's librarians have looked into it, asking questions about bullying and stuff like that. Yeah, it's great for social science too. It's great for physics. It's awesome. And the other thing I want to do is share prompts, so you can try them at home and see how they work. And hopefully, I'll start recording them and demonstrating them. I had a whole bunch of stuff, videos of me doing stuff online, um, in my Facebook group, but because there was a radio, well, it was not a radio, but I had music playing in the background, and Facebook was like, "That's copyrighted music. We're gonna take your video down." And I'm like, "Damn, oh, lesson learned." But yeah, sharing prompts. So I'll make more videos of prompt fails and wins and stuff like that. The other thing is to make some tutorials, again with the prompts. Major events that happen, yeah, things that should be noted. Um, there is, I believe, Italy banned ChatGPT 4. I think maybe all of ChatGPT. I don't quite recall. But the Biden administration which is the current presidential administration, is looking into restrictions and stuff like that, which would be a real bummer. And relevant news, things that will affect librarians using ChatGPT. And finally, it's the last slide. Yeah, if you like the content, and you think it's worth sharing, share it. I'm not even asking you to subscribe, which would be cool, or like the page or whatever. Um, you know, whatever's cool. But if you think there's someone who can benefit from the content, uh, please share it. That'd be great. All right. Where's the thing? Okay. Take it easy.